Are those supposed to be real? The words, dripping with the easy contempt of someone untouched by struggle, echoed through the vast stillness of the courtroom. Judge Albright, immaculate, in a suit worth more than the motorcycle Fred Hudson had ridden in on, leaned forward over his polished bench, a faint smirk curling at his lips. He studied the old man before him, there for nothing more than a minor traffic infraction. Fred Hudson, 84 years old, stood motionless. His posture was straight and proud, the kind of bearing shaped by a lifetime of discipline, from a world the judge could never begin to comprehend. He wore a worn, faded denim jacket, the kind that had weathered decades of sun, rain, and time itself. Pinned neatly to the left breast, just above his heart, were 3 rows of service ribbons and a single star-shaped medal hanging from a pale blue ribbon. They were the source of the judge's amusement. "Your Honor," began Fred's public defender, a young attorney named Sarah Jenkins, "my client's military service has no relevance to this case." Judge Albright waved her off without a glance, eyes locked on the old man before him. "I'm sure it doesn't," he said coolly. "I'm just curious." Quite the display for someone who can't remember the speed limit on a county road. "Let me guess. Bought them at a surplus store?" "A little costume jewelry for the VFW crowd." The small gallery shifted uncomfortably. A few muffled laughs came from the back, but most people looked away, uneasy and embarrassed. Fred Hudson stood silent, his weathered face unmoved. His clear gray eyes were fixed on the state flag behind the bench, calm, distant, unshaken. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even insulted. It was as if he'd drifted somewhere far away, a place untouched by the judge's petty cruelty. "I asked you a question, sir," the judge pressed, voice rising. He relished this moment, the small-town power, the ability to dismantle a man under the mask of authority. "Are you going to answer me, or are you as deaf as you are decorated?" Sarah stiffened, anger flashing in her eyes. "Your Honor, that's inappropriate. Mr. Hudson is a veteran and deserves respect." "Respect is earned," Counselor Albright snapped, his tone sharp as a whip. "And parading around with a chest full of tin doesn't earn it in my courtroom. Now, Mr. Hudson, for the last time, where did you get the medals?" Fred finally lowered his gaze from the flag and met the judge's eyes. His voice, when he spoke, was soft, but carried the weight of truth. "They were given to me." The simplicity of the answer seemed to irritate Albright even more. "Given to you by whom? The costume shop manager?" He sneered, leaning back in his chair like a caricature of smug authority. "Let's be clear, old man. Wearing a 50-year-old uniform doesn't give you immunity. You ran a stop sign, sped 20 miles over the limit, and show up here wearing that ridiculous jacket like it's a shield. It's an insult to real heroes who served honorably." Each word was designed to humiliate. Sarah could feel the tension coiling inside her, fury bubbling beneath her composure. Fred, however, remained still. His aged hands rested calmly on the defense table. He didn't move. He didn't flinch. He simply absorbed the abuse in silence. "Take the jacket off," the judge ordered. A collective gasp swept the courtroom. This was no longer about a traffic violation. It was a public stripping of dignity, Your Honor. "Can't be serious," Sarah protested, her voice trembling. "I am perfectly serious," he shot back. "This is my courtroom. That display is a distraction. Remove it, or I'll hold you in contempt." The bailiff, a large man accustomed to tense moments, hesitated. His eyes met Fred's, and for an instant, there was something like apology in them. Fred didn't move. He didn't look at the bailiff or the judge. His eyes dropped to his medals, lingering briefly on the one hanging from the blue ribbon. He seemed to hear something distant, a memory, voice, something no one else in the room could sense. His silence was his answer. A quiet, unyielding no. "Fine," the judge spat, face reddening. "Bailiff, add a contempt charge and a $500 fine. Maybe that'll get his attention." Then his gaze locked on the medal at the center of Fred's chest, the Medal of Honor. His lip curled in disgust. Especially that one. The gall to wear a fake Medal of Honor? Do you have any idea what that represents? The blood? The sacrifice? Wearing that is a disgrace. As the judge ranted, the sterile courtroom began to fade around Fred. The sharp words dissolved into another sound, the roar of helicopter blades. The screams of men, the chaos of battle. The polished wood vanished, replaced by the thick, choking air of a jungle near Huck City. He was back in the rice paddies, mud sucking at his boots, bullets tearing through the air. The blue ribbon was no longer fabric. It was the same color as the sky above the canopy, just before he'd sprinted from cover to reach a fallen soldier. He felt the weight of Private Miller on his back, the blood soaking through his fatigues, the desperate focus of getting the boy to safety. That metal wasn't tin. It was the weight of another man's life. The memory slipped away, leaving only the courtroom silent, heavy, unchanged. Fred's breathing deepened, steady but strong. Sarah watched, heart pounding. The judge's cruelty, the crowd's unease, and Fred's calm defiance burned into her. What she was witnessing wasn't just injustice, it was desecration. She looked down at the intake form again. Military service, yes, nothing more. No branch, no rank, no honors. The humility was staggering. A desperate idea struck her. As the judge droned on for the record, Sarah leaned toward Fred. "Mr. Hudson," she whispered urgently, "is there anyone I can call from your old unit?" Fred turned slightly, meeting her eyes. "It was a long time ago, miss," he said softly. "Most of them are gone now. There has to be someone," she pressed. Her gaze fell on a small pin at his collar, a crest she didn't recognize. "Let me just step out for a moment." "I'll be right back," the judge waved dismissively. "Do as you like, counselor." "Your client isn't going anywhere." Sarah hurried out, her heels echoing down the hallway. She ducked into an alcove, hands trembling as she pulled out her phone. She didn't go for a file. She searched the pin. U.S. Army crest with a dagger over a castle. Results. Flooded in. First Special Forces Group, Green Berets. Her breath caught. This was no ordinary veteran. She scrolled until she found a contact, Fort Lewis's Public Affairs. It was a gamble, but she dialed. Fort Lewis Public Affairs. Came a bored voice. "My name is Sarah Jenkins. I'm a public defender in Northwood County. I have a client, a veteran in trouble. His name is Fred Hudson. The judge doesn't believe his medals are real, and we can't intervene in civilian cases." The specialist replied flatly. "He's wearing a first group pin," she said quickly. "Please, his name is Fred Hudson." Silence. Then the sound of frantic typing. A sharp intake of breath. "Ma'am," the voice said, suddenly urgent, "what courtroom are you in?" "Courtroom C, Northwood County Courthouse." "Do not let your client leave. Do not let them take him anywhere. We're on our way." The line went dead. Sarah stood frozen, the phone still in her hand. The specialist's final words echoing in her mind. "We are on our way." For the first time that day, she felt something new, a surge of fierce, unshakable hope. The call had ended in Washington State. The shockwave it set off moved faster than anyone in that courtroom could imagine. Asterisk, the specialist who answered. Sarah's call didn't waste a second. He bypassed multiple layers of protocol, routing the call straight to the commanding officer's office, a battle-hardened colonel who had seen his share of wars. The colonel's knuckles whitened around the edge of his desk as he listened. The instant he heard the name Fred Hudson, stood up so abruptly that his chair toppled backward. "Hold the line," he ordered. Striding out of his office and down the corridor, toward a suite of rooms reserved for the highest-ranking officers. Without knocking, he burst through the door. Inside, General Marcus Thorne, a man of granite composure and unwavering authority. 3 gleaming stars on each shoulder, was reviewing logistics reports. His piercing gaze lifted, irritation flashing across his face at the interruption. "Sir," the colonel said, breathless, "we have a code Nightingale." The general's eyes sharpened instantly. Code Nightingale was not part of any official record. It was an unwritten, sacred protocol reserved for a select few legends whose valor had transcended the institution itself. It had not been invoked in more than 10 years. "Who?" the general asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Sergeant Major Fred Hudson, sir." General Thorne was out of his chair before the words had finished leaving the colonel's mouth. Papers scattered across his desk. Shock flickered across his face, quickly replaced by thunderous anger. Where is he? Northwood County Courthouse, sir? A local judge has him in contempt, claims he's faking his medals. The colonel paused, his voice tight with disbelief. Including the Medal of Honor. The general's jaw flexed, a muscle twitching beneath his cheek. Get me a chopper to the nearest airfield, he barked. Have a car ready on the ground, full honor guard, dress blues. I want boots on that courthouse floor in under an hour. Asterisk, he turned to his aide, who was already scrambling to follow. Find everything on Judge Albright. His background, education, connections, habits, all of it. And get me the Secretary of the Army. Tell him a national treasure is being humiliated by a man unfit to shine his boots. Back in courtroom C, Judge Albright was basking in his own smug satisfaction. He believed he'd made his point, crushed the defiance of a young public defender, and humbled the silent old man before him. Sarah Jenkins had returned to the defense table, pale but newly resolute. Her eyes burned with defiance, though the judge ignored her completely. Given your refusal to obey this court, Albright intoned, drawing out each word, and your apparent delusion regarding your so-called service record, I am not only holding you in contempt, I am ordering a 72-hour psychiatric evaluation. The courtroom gasped. The judge smiled thinly. You will be remanded to the state hospital for assessment. This was more than punishment. It was degradation, the erasure of a man's honor and sanity in one stroke. He raised his gavel high, but before it could strike, a heavy thud echoed through the hall. The courtroom doors burst open with a crash. 2 soldiers entered, tall, precise, immaculate in their dress blues. They moved with perfect synchronization, taking positions on either side of the entrance, standing at parade rest, eyes forward. The room went dead silent. Judge Albright froze mid-motion, his gavel suspended. Then a third figure stepped through the doors. General Marcus Thorne. His uniform gleamed with medals, his boots striking the floor in deliberate, thunderous rhythm, click, 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 each step a warning. He didn't glance at the judge or the crowd. His gaze swept the room, locking onto Fred Hudson. He stopped 2 feet from the defense table. The air seemed to hum with authority. For a long moment, the 2 men simply looked at each other, one forged in command, the other in quiet courage. Then the general straightened, snapped to attention, and delivered the sharpest salute of his life. The motion was crisp, reverent, unflinching. Sergeant Major Hudson, his voice rang out. Filling every corner of the courtroom, it is an honor to be in your presence, sir. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Fred Hudson slowly lifted his hand, returning the salute with a steady grace that erased the weight of his years. Judge Albright found his voice, stammering, What is the meaning of this? Who are you? This is my courtroom. General Thorne lowered his hand, but his gaze never wavered. When he finally turned to the judge, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. The meaning, Your Honor, the general said, voice low and cutting, is that you stand before a hero of the Republic, and you are about to learn the meaning of respect? He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. You questioned this man's medals? Allow me to clarify, he read aloud. Sergeant Major Fred Hudson, United States Army. Enlisted 1958, 30 years of distinguished service. 3 tours in Vietnam. Member of the 5th Special Forces Group, Military Assistance Command, Vietnam Studies and Observations Group. He paused, letting the weight of that legendary name hang in the air. Decorations: Bronze Star with V for Valor, 3 awards. Silver Star, 2 awards. Distinguished Service Cross, Purple Heart, 4 awards. Each word fell like a hammer. Finally his voice softened, but the fury within it burned hotter than ever. And this one, he said, pointing to the medal on the pale blue ribbon, this piece of tin you mocked, is the Medal of Honor, awarded to Staff Sergeant Hudson for gallantry above and beyond the call of duty Hugh City. 1968, he charged 2 enemy machine gun nests, saved 3 wounded men under fire, and returned to the fight. He didn't just earn this medal, he embodied it. The general folded the paper and fixed his eyes on the judge. "This man's jacket holds more honor than this entire courthouse. You have disgraced yourself, your office, and this nation." Albright sat pale and trembling, unable to speak. His gavel lay forgotten. The general turned back to Fred. "Sergeant Major, on behalf of the United States Army and a grateful nation, I apologize for the indignity you've endured." Then, facing the judge again, his tone dropped to ice. "As for you, Your Honor, I've already spoken to your governor and the Judicial Conduct Commission. Expect to be hearing from them very soon." The courtroom remained frozen in stunned silence. It was Fred who finally broke it. He placed a gentle hand on the general's arm. "Marcus," he said quietly. "He made a mistake, a bad one, but he just didn't know." Turning to the judge, Fred's voice softened. "The medals aren't the point, son. They're just reminders. Respect isn't demanded with a gavel. It's given freely to anyone in front of you, whether they're a general or a janitor." For a moment, his gaze seemed to drift far away, back to a humid jungle. Kneeling beside a terrified young enemy soldier, offering him a sip of water. "The honor was never in the fight. It was in remembering you were still human." The aftermath was swift. The story spread across the nation. The image of General Thorne saluting the quiet old veteran became a symbol of humility, justice, and respect. Judge Albright was suspended, investigated, and ultimately forced into early retirement. The state legislature passed a new bill, Hudson's Law, mandating training on veteran respect for all public officials. Fred wanted no glory. He returned to his quiet life, fixing his motorcycle, meeting friends for coffee. A month later, the bell above the diner door chimed. Judge Albright, no robes, no arrogance, approached his table. "Mr. Hudson," he said softly. "May I sit?" Fred nodded. "I wanted to apologize," Albright said, his voice breaking. "I was arrogant. I was cruel. I was wrong." Fred studied him for a moment, then gave a faint nod. "I hear you're not on the bench anymore," Albright admitted. "I'm not." "Good," Fred said evenly. Albright flinched until Fred added, "A man shouldn't hold a job he doesn't have the heart for." He pushed a menu toward him. "Coffee's good here." It was a simple act of grace, forgiveness given freely. For the first time, Albright saw Fred Hudson not as a defendant or an old man, but as the embodiment of the very respect he'd once failed to show. Stories like Fred Hudson's remind us that true heroism isn't loud. It's steady, humble, and human. If you believe such valor deserves to be remembered, like this video, share it, and subscribe to Veteran Valor, where real hero stories live on.